Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Baugh, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. We are on a set which employs a replication of a palace of splendor, the Shushan Palace of Ahasuerus, where Esther made history in ancient Israel, is exemplified here. This palace is a palace of splendor, even in its replication for a television set. But I want to talk to you today about some splendor far outshining these marble halls. Universal splendor. That's the topic of today's program. If you have a friend who hasn't tuned in for a while, they need to hear this program, because I want to talk to you about some astounding information that demonstrates a splendor in the universe that requires a universal designer involved in every single detail. For instance, the evolutionary community has recognized that there is a refinement in the universe and the particles of the universe beyond the power of chance. For instance, there are 10 to the 80th power of electrons in the universe. Now, contemplate that a moment. That is a huge figure. That figure involves not only planet Earth, our solar system with its planets, our Sol, the Sun, our local Milky Way galaxy, but it employs the effects of 225 billion galaxies, each with over 500 million stars. You put all of that together with intergalactic space and intergalactic particles, and scientists recognize that the electron is the smallest unit of measurable material. So with that smallest unit of measurable material, 1/2000th the mass of the proton, the number of electrons in the entire universe is only 10 to the 80th. That's a big number, but watch this. Scientists have found that the interplay of subatomic particles is so critical, such as the mass of the proton. If the mass of the proton were slightly greater than it is, the entire universe would collapse in 12 minutes. Now, did you get that? This is in the technical literature. This is not a figure that's just pulled out of the air. Scientists have measured a subatomic particle that is just slightly heavier, minuscule, slightly heavier than the proton, but it collapses in 12 minutes. What this means is there's a universal splendor in design holding the entire function of the universe together. That, to me, that's absolutely incredible. Now, take it beyond this. Scientists recognize that with these electrons, let's go from the proton back to the electron being the smallest unit of measurable material, 1/2000th the mass of the proton. Now, it's 10 to the 80th power of electrons that we have in the entire universe, so get that number in mind. Now, they recognize that putting all of the particles together, they have to be refined to a degree in less than 1 part in 10 to the 55th power. For you scholars and mathematicians in the audience, you'll recognize that that is beyond any possibility of having occurred by chance. Now, other astronomers and speculators envision theories that in order to have a universe with such splendor, with the anthropic principle in place, that is, everything in place for the function of mankind and living systems, for all of that to be in place, if it were by chance, simultaneously there had to be 10 to the 50th power of additional, 10 to the 500th power of additional universes in place in order for us to get one in which we could be produced. Absolute splendor. There are not 10 to the 500th power of additional universes. At least scientifically, there's no evidence that there's even a single additional universe. This is the only one we can measure scientifically. This is the only one we can talk about with any degree of scientific certainty and veracity. So putting it together, remaining scientific, and this is a program of scientific information, putting all of this together, we see that we have an incredible universal splendor. So let's talk about some of the things involved in this universal splendor. Let's start out in the heavens and see how far we can get and bring ourselves down to where we live. I mentioned earlier that scientists now estimate, astronomers now estimate, and astrophysicists now estimate that we have 225 billion galaxies, each comprised of over 500 million stars. And these galaxies are, they have found, located basically in concentric rings, with our Milky Way galaxy being at or near the center, meaning that our planet Earth and our solar system find themselves at or near the center of the universe. And they've measured some years ago, remeasured again a few months ago, and found consistent truth to demonstrate that out from our Milky Way galaxy, there are vast regions of space with very few galaxies, and then a wall of galaxies, not just in space, but surrounding our galaxy, a wall of galaxies. More space, very few galaxies and stars, and then another wall, more space, very few more. Then, ultimately, they have found evidence of 7 such concentric walls or shells or tiers of stellar bodies, galaxies in place. That is universal splendor. The number 7 crops up again and again and again. But Dr. Michael Denton, not a creationist by any means, not a Christian by any means in his approach to life, he is a secular scholar. He's a very interesting individual and is exploring the implications of what he has found. He published a book some years ago on design in nature. And in this book, he revealed that astrophysicists now have found that the motion and the gravitational attraction of the vast myriad of stars and galaxies in the greatest recesses of the universe, in motion, if you have a concentric ring nearer our Milky Way galaxy, then a larger one beyond that, a larger one beyond that. You get to the last 2, 3, or 4 concentric rings, and the largest mass, the greatest mass of the universe, is found in these tiers. And they're all in motion. And he found that the velocity and gravitational attraction involved give a balance. Now, this is a secular report from the technical literature. The velocity and gravitational attraction involved from the universe as a whole give a gravitational balance, making it possible at our place in the universe, on the arm of Orion of the Milky Way galaxy, our solar system, our planet Earth, at or near the center of the universe, making it possible for us to move a finger. And he states, in essence, that were it not for this velocity and gravitational attraction on the greatest, at the greatest distances of the universe, affecting us, in order for us to move a finger, it would require incredible machinery or musculature. In order for us to wink an eyelash or blink an eyelash, it would require an incredible amount of energy and musculature. Once we get that finger or eyelash in motion, it would require an incredible amount of energy and musculature to pull it back and to use it. Thus, he is stating, in essence, that were it not for this incredible anthropic design in the background of the universe, life as we know it could not exist. Universal splendor. But let's take it beyond that. We have in our solar system the planets. Professor Robert Whitelaw, Emeritus professor at Virginia Polytechnic Institute, a world-class scholar, personal friend of mine who wrote the foreword to a book that I published some years ago titled Panorama of Creation. Professor Robert Whitelaw published a white paper demonstrating that the rotation of the planets around our sun actually demonstrate visually the diatonic musical scale. The music of the spheres is not simply a concept, it is a reality. In fact, there are historical records indicating that when the canopy was in place prior to the flood, and while there was a stronger canopy that is now collapsing very rapidly, our ozone canopy, while the electromagnetic field above the Earth was stronger, some of the music of the spheres could actually be picked up. There are historical references indicating this. It's an incredible universe of splendor. But now let's bring it closer to home. Let's look at the interplay of living systems in the physical universe. Were it not for the moon and its gravitational attraction, here's the symbol of the sun, here's the symbol of the moon. Were it not for the moon in its diurnal gravitational attraction, then the tides of the earth would be essentially non-existent, and all the shorelines of the sea around the globe would become stagnant in a matter of weeks. We have a perpetual cleansing involved in the ocean tides affected by the moon. Thus, we have an additional universal splendor. But let's take it beyond that. Let's get to the atmospheric conditions around us. Prior to the flood, if you watch this program any period of time, you know that prior to the flood, the information that we've given is that prior to the flood, the diameter of the earth was slightly smaller. The universal law of gravitation kicks in, meaning that the gravitational attraction at sea level for this smaller globe with the same mass would generate greater atmospheric pressure. That was a utopian context. Approximately 2 atmospheres of pressure give us a marvelous condition in which the available oxygen is tripled in its assimilation inside the lung system and thus drives oxygen to the deep cells. So we had an even greater orchestration of splendor prior to the flood. But even now, with the loss of the tremendous canopy above the earth, kept in place because of the strength of the magnetic field, and with the loss of the intensity of the magnetic field, we still have a context in which life can flourish. And as it does, we have a demonstration of splendor. The Creator is gently whispering to us. The laughter of a child, the cooing of a child is the most beautiful music in all the world. The songbirds present to us a melody that activates, now watch closely, the songbirds in their early singing in the morning and their late afternoon symphony, scientists have found, actually stimulate the stomata of plants. And in so doing, they permit greater absorption of atmospheric moisture, nutrients, and sound. With this sound, there's a stimulation of growth. What an incredible orchestration of earthly splendor. But let's go beyond that. The Creator is not just whispering to us in the cooing of a child, the laughter of a child, the melody of the birds, the symphony of the sun each day reviving photosynthesis within the plants. But we have a marvelous truth that to me is so moving that when we get the ultimate museum, Creation Evidence Museum, in its final phase completed, we want to have this demonstrated within a local biosphere. Watch closely. Throughout the earth, there are gentle suggestions of symbols. And these gentle suggestions of symbols in nature are subliminally picked up by the human mind. Now, let me talk to you about that for a moment. Subliminally picked up by the human mind? Yes. I published a book some years ago called Why Do Men Believe Evolution Against All Odds? And in that, I cited the references, this one from Scientific American, where a world-class scholar has found that the human brain, a neurologist found, that the human brain anticipates problems, works out solutions, and follows a course of action, all without our even knowing that a problem existed at all. The human brain is incredible. It picks up certain signals. Now watch this. Throughout nature, there are signals of our alphabet. And I'm sure this is true in the Greek. I'm especially sure that this is true in the Hebrew, so we want to do some additional studies regarding this. But throughout nature we find signs. There's an A. In the intertwining of the vine, there's a B. With the caterpillar from Brazil, there's the C. And then we have the red-spotted crab with a D. We have the peeling bark with an E. We have a leaf in full moon with an F. We have a high-altitude lichen with a G. We have a flying cephalid with the H. Then we have the eye of the fly with an I. J, K, L, M with the monarch butterflies. N, O, P with a ladybug. Viper snake with a Q. And the human brain picks all of this up. The arm of other snakes, the brittle snake with the R, S, T, U, V, and the young palm leaves, W, X, Y, all the way, the Z, and then we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 0, and the lamprey shell. Incredible suggestions throughout nature that are picked up by the human brain, and thus in time we develop the alphabet. But I think more intriguing than this is what was published. In fact, this was published. It's the Nature Alphabet by Jel Sanville, who lectures at the Smithsonian. And he then published, and we purchased through his publishing agency, the Butterfly Alphabet. Now, to me, this is absolutely incredible. Traveling worldwide, this scholar and Smithsonian lecturer found that on the wings of butterflies, the alphabet was demonstrated through nature. There is the A. All of these are wings of butterflies. The B, the C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 0. Incredible information that we have, that the Creator is whispering to us. Not only universal grandeur and splendor, but splendor within our own life experience. Now we come to another point that demonstrates this splendor. A man lived in the 13th century. He was known as Fibonacci. He had a different name, but he was known as Fibonacci, and he worked out some mathematical details. He was a brilliant scholar, and he found that there was a sequence in multiplication of rabbits and pigeons and other living systems, and he found that it has been found later that this entire sequence, where you add the two preceding digits and then add these digits and add these digits, etc., the Fibonacci series, this is found in the spiral arms of galaxies, this ratio. It is found in the demonstration of the seeds of the sunflower. It is found additionally in the spiral revolution of plants and trees. It is found in pine cones, and incredible display of information systematically demonstrated throughout the universe. So we have it in the spiral arms of galaxies, but that's not all. We have this display in the human frame. The ratio of the two preceding numbers added together, being added, giving a third ratio. This is seen in the human figure at large. It is seen in the human hand, the dimensions of the bones of the human hands, from smaller to larger. You double that to larger, double those, or add those rather, and then you get this one. The same is true. This one, add those, and you get this, phalanges. It is seen in the perfect dimension of the human face that the Greeks demonstrated. Since then, we've had a bit of genetic deterioration, and our faces in general do not look as photogenic or as picturesque as they did in the past. You need to get this information. There is a splendor written throughout the entire universe. Now, the human face and then the human fingers in the curling action give that same spiral galaxy ratio that we find from the heavens down to the earth. And then we find this marvelous splendor written into living systems, such as the cell, requiring a design that is beyond the possibility of chance. Now, let me repeat some figures I gave near the top of the program. Scholars who will not retain God in their minds, who refuse to accept a personal creator being possible at all, have speculated that for such a creation, such a universe, with the anthropic principle refined to 1 part in 10 to the 55th power among the particles of the universe, to make organic chemistry function, to make physical inorganic chemistry function, and the two are separate entities in their function systems. Well, to put all of this together on a universal scale, in order to get a universe like this, it would require that there be 10 to the 500th power of universes in order to get one with these special figures. Well, what I'm saying is there's splendor that had to be designed, but that design is not simply left to chemistry, to physics. That design enters human history. For instance, I brought some information that just came to my attention. Otherwise, I would have mastered the details, but it is too important for you not to know about. In order for the Israelites, a miracle nation of design, to survive the desert from Egypt to the Promised Land, the splendor of divine intervention is required. For instance, there were 2 to 3 million people to be fed every day. The Quartermaster General in the Army has reported that if Moses himself had done the feeding, he would have required 1,500 tons of food each day. That would bring food every day required. To bring this food every day would require 2 freight trains, each at least a mile long. And you would need firewood to cook the food because they did not eat raw quail out in the wilderness. The firewood used for cooking the food would require 4,000 tons of wood and a few more freight trains, each a mile long, just for a single day. In addition to that, water would be required. Now, the Israelites had learned long in their history not to use dirty dishes. So we're not just talking about a few ounces of water for the persons. It would require 11 million gallons of water each day, requiring a freight train of tank cars 1,800 miles long just to bring the water, and then to cross the Red Sea at night. If they were in a narrow path, dual file or double file, it would be 800 miles long and would require 35 days and nights to get through. Instead, there had to be a wide path in the sea, 3 miles wide, so they could walk 500 abreast to get over in one night. And that's not all. The campground would require 2/3 the size of the state of Rhode Island, 750 square miles of campground just to accommodate pitching their tents. I'm saying there's a universal splendor that's been applied in a lifetime. Let me bring it to you. Some years ago, dear friend of mine, the late Earl Smith, and I were playing golf. I'm not a good golfer. I play once in a great while, but I enjoy it when I do play. We went to the golf course, and as we stepped up to the first tee, a pilot, an executive pilot whose job was to transport the executives, and then they let him have the day off until they were ready to fly back, stepped up to us, introduced himself, and said, "Can I play with you?" Well, surely. We played the first hole, the second. On the third, it rounded an area, and it ran parallel to the road. I stepped up and hit the tee, hit the ball on the tee. It took a heavy hook. There were people on the roadway. Instead of going out in the roadway, it hit the power line, bounced twice more, fell back into the fairway. Now, it required some incredible manipulation to keep from hitting those individuals. It required incredible information and activity for God to send His Son to planet Earth. But He did. He died. He was buried. He rose again. And right now is knocking at your heart's door. Would you just open your heart's door right now and pray, "Lord Jesus, come in and save me forever. I'll live for you with all my heart." Universal splendor.
Creation in the 21st Century has been sponsored by Trinity Broadcasting Network, and only with your love gift of support can this program stay on the air. So write to Creation in the 21st Century, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.
Information like you've received today is available at the Creation Evidence Museum in printed form, in videos. We even have a coloring book for the kids. Just call or write us at Creation Evidence Museum, P.O. Box 309, Glen Rose, Texas 76043, area code 254-897-3200, or check us out